Behind their stone faces, something darker awaits. Millions of people visit these public monuments every year, but many don't know the secrets they hold. Today, we're going to unveil 15 secrets that are hidden inside public monuments. Let's start with number 15, Mount Rushmore and the Hidden Hall of Records. Mount Rushmore features the faces of 4 U.S. presidents carved into the granite of South Dakota's Black Hills. Each face is over 60 feet tall and the monument attracts over 2 million people annually. And behind the face of Abraham Lincoln is a hidden chamber known as the Hall of Records. This chamber was conceived by Gutzon Borglum, the lead sculptor of Mount Rushmore, and he intended it to be a vault of storing important U.S. documents like the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights. The plan was for the hall to be lined with bronze and marble tablets and serve as a shrine to these documents. Well, construction of the Hall of Records began in 1938 and workers excavated a 70-foot vertical shaft and started carving an entrance chamber 35 feet deep. Construction was halted in 1941, though, due to funding issues and the start of World War II. Borglum also died that year, and his son Lincoln Borglum ceased work on the chamber. The Hall of Records was left unfinished, an empty cavern just sitting behind Lincoln's face. The chamber was sealed and inaccessible to the public for decades, but in 1998, the National Park Service installed a time capsule in the unfinished Hall of Records, and the capsule's in a titanium vault sealed behind a granite capstone. It has 16 porcelain enamel panels with the words of key American texts, a biography of Borglum, and an explanation of the monument's purpose. It is intended for future civilizations, of course. But today, the Hall of Records is closed to the public. It's fenced off and under surveillance. The entrance is only visible by helicopter or maybe a drone, and viewers on the viewing platform are unaware of the sealed chamber behind Lincoln's head. Mount Rushmore also has a history that's related to the Lakota Sioux. The Black Hills were originally sacred land to the Lakota Sioux, who called them the Six Grandfathers. This carving of the president's faces is considered a desecration by many Native American communities, and the U.S. government took the Black Hills in violation of the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie. A 1980 Supreme Court ruling confirmed that the land was taken illegally, and the Lakota have refused financial compensation and insist the land must be returned. Mount Rushmore includes the Hidden Chamber, the Hall of Records, and has a history of land seizure from the Lakota Sioux. It's both an engineering project and it's a site with a complex historical context. Number 14, the Lincoln Memorial, Hollow Chambers, and a Hidden Surveillance History. So the Lincoln Memorial at the western end of the National Mall in Washington, D.C. features a neoclassical facade and a 19-foot seated statue of Abraham Lincoln. It attracts millions of people annually. But below the memorial is a network of hollow chambers and a history involving Cold War surveillance. Construction started in 1914, but due to the marshy ground near the Potomac River, engineers needed to build deep reinforced foundations. They excavated large areas and filled it in with concrete support piers. This left a large, empty space, and they called it the Undercroft. Well, it consists of intersecting corridors, reinforced beams, concrete supports, and even dirt floors. This space is rarely seen by the public. It's got high ceilings, unfinished walls, and a cool, musty atmosphere. Pipes run along the walls, and some lights hang down from exposed beams, and in the 1970s workers found graffiti dating back to the 1920s and 30s, including initials, murals, and even drawings. These markings were made by the original construction crews. During the Cold War, though, the Lincoln Memorial's Undercroft was used for surveillance equipment and monitoring stations. The National Park Police installed radio rooms and observation posts, some of which are still there. Old wiring, radio equipment, and lockers are still present, and there are unconfirmed rumors that the space was prepared as a secure communications bunker. More recently, though, the Undercroft has housed bats and insects, leading to ecological studies and pest control efforts. Some workers have reported strange sounds down there. While those reports are anecdotal, the atmosphere is considered unsettling. In 2017, the National Park Service announced plans to renovate and open parts of the Undercroft to the public, including a glass walkway. But as of now, access remains restricted. It is a significant space beneath the memorial. The Undercroft, that's an awesome name. It contains graffiti from the construction period, remnants of the Cold War surveillance, and it's been a habitat for wildlife. It is a space with a hidden history beneath the Lincoln Memorial. Number 13. The Washington Monument. The Washington Monument is over 555 feet tall, and it's one of the most recognized obelisks in the world. It honors George Washington, the first U.S. president, and is the tallest stone structure in the world. Construction began in 1848 and finished in 1884, with delays due to funding issues, the Civil War, and of course, political disputes. A pyramid-shaped capstone made of aluminum, a valuable metal at the time, was placed on top. It acted like a lightning rod. However, the lightning protection system had some problems. The monument is struck by lightning multiple times each year, sometimes as often as a dozen times. The initial system failed, causing cracks in the stone and scorch marks inside. Visitors have reported feeling static electricity during storms. A man once fainted after a lightning strike affected the elevator shaft. But moisture and repeated strikes led to some crumbling mortar and electrical failures. Additional copper rods and grounding wires were installed, but the issue persists due to the monument's height and location, making it a frequent target for lightning. Engineers do record every strike, though. The 2011 Virginia earthquake caused a bit of structural damage, including cracks in the stone and dislodged mortar. The top 100 feet of the tower shifted. Surveillance footage showed some dust and debris falling down, and fissures were found in the pyramidon and stairwell. A stone panel shifted and the monument was closed for over 3 years for repairs. The aluminum capstone is inscribed with Laus Deo, praise be to God, the builders, the names, the date of completion, and scientific measurements. The very top of the monument is now inaccessible to the public, and the observation deck sits 30 feet below it. The capstone is sealed inside of a lightning cage surrounded by wiring and structural patches, and some believe Masonic symbols are inside the foundation, as a cornerstone was laid inside Masonic ceremonies. A time capsule may exist within the base too, containing newspapers, coins, and mementos, and some suggest there are sealed chambers in the foundation, although radar studies suggest otherwise. The monument's color, by the way, changes halfway up due to a change in stone sources after the Civil War. It was closed multiple times due to elevator malfunctions, cracks, and electrical storms. The Washington Monument has some structural issues, lightning damage, and is inaccessible to the aluminum capstone. It's got a complex history, and it's required repeated repairs and updates to its electrical systems. Number 12. The Altar of the Fatherland, Rome's monument with a disputed tomb. In Rome, near the Roman Forum, is the Altar of the Fatherland, also known as the Vittoriano. It's a large white marble monument built to honor Victor Emmanuel II, the first king of a unified Italy. Due to its size and appearance, though, it's received nicknames like the typewriter and the wedding cake. It also includes the tomb of the unknown soldier. It was designed as a tribute to Italian unification, and during the era of Benito Mussolini, the monument was used for fascist rallies and parades, and Mussolini oversaw the construction of the Via dei Fori Imperiali, a wide avenue leading to the Vittoriano. That required the destruction of some ancient Roman ruins, and he delivered speeches from the monument's balcony. The tomb of the unknown soldier, though, was installed in 1921, holding the remains of an unidentified Italian soldier who died during World War I. 11 unidentified corpses were collected from battlefields and placed in caskets. Maria Bergamas, whose son died in the war, was asked to choose one casket. The chosen casket was interred with national honors and in eternal flame. However, some of the bodies were misidentified and some may not have been Italian. One body was later suspected to be Austrian. The monument has a large underground structure as well, with sealed vaults, archives, and ceremonial chambers, and some of these spaces haven't been opened since the 1930s. It's been stated that parts of the lower levels are poorly documented and their contents are unknown. The eternal flame, too, has gone out several times due to some power outages, gas line failures, and a bit of human intervention. And this monument has whispering galleries due to its architecture. Sounds here carry strangely in the staircases and porticos. Maintenance workers have reported hearing footsteps and conversations in sealed-off areas. While the monument is open to the public, only a small portion is accessible. Locked doors, chained barred stairwells, and hallways lead to inaccessible areas. The official reasons for this include structural integrity, preservation, and undocumented wiring, and past vandalism. It is a monument to national unity that was built over older ruins. It was built during the fascist era and, of course, contains a tomb with uncertainty regarding the identity of the soldier. Number 11. Christ the Redeemer, the internal structure, weather damage, and lost documents of Rio's monument. Standing 98 feet tall atop Corcovado Mountain overlooking Rio de Janeiro, Christ the Redeemer is a well-known statue. It represents peace, hope, and Brazilian cultural and religious identity. Visitors go to see its size, its location, and the monument has a history that includes construction problems, lightning damage, internal chambers, lost engineering documents, and a restricted internal area. The interior, though, is closed to the public. The statue is hollow, containing stairs, platforms, walkways, and concrete tunnels, and inside there are structural supports and service areas, maintenance chambers, and access hatches located at the head and the shoulders, with those spaces being small and only a few technicians have ever entered them. The statue itself was completed in 1931 after 9 years of planning and 5 years of construction. The Brazilian engineer Heitor da Silva Costa designed it, and French artist Paul Landowski sculpted it. It was meant to be both symbolic and strong. Due to its size and mountain location, it's exposed to wind and storms, so designers had to create specific methods to make it stable. The internal structure is made of reinforced concrete ribs, which support the outer shell of soapstone tiles. Access is through a small maintenance door at the base, and inside is a spiral staircase of more than 12 stories, about 1,300 steps lit by service lights. There are walkways, metal platforms that cross through the chest, the shoulders, and the head, and these are used for inspection, lightning repairs, and emergency access. In these walkways, the space is pretty quiet. Workers say the echo of footsteps lasts for minutes in there, and at the shoulder levels are trapdoors that lead to observation hatches behind the arms, which are rarely opened. Those hatches were built for engineers to check on stress points in the arms, but are pretty difficult to reach. The head of the statue has an internal space. It is possible to climb a ladder into that space, but it requires some physical ability and a bit of clearance. There are no railings and few lights, and inside the head is empty space too, with a vent and a hatch for monitoring. In the 1980s, engineers found stress cracks in the concrete structure inside the head caused by lightning strikes. It's struck by lightning 3 to 5 times each year on average, and the statue had internal lightning rods, copper wires in the concrete, but many had corroded or failed. In 2014, lightning broke off the tip of the right thumb, and in 2008 the head was struck, damaging a soapstone panel and causing fractures in the supporting ribs. Much of the original documentation from the 1920s and 30s, like blueprints, material orders, sketches, were lost or destroyed. The only records are in private archives belonging to the descendants of Heitor da Silva Costa. These documents are not digitized and have not been fully released, but modern engineers don't know everything about the statue's design. When damage happens, there is often no reference material. Oh, and during construction, multiple people died. Official records were pretty vague, but memoirs and letters suggest falls, lightning strikes, and injuries did happen. These were not all reported either, and no plaque commemorates the dead. Some locals believe the interior is haunted too by those who died building it. Maintenance crews have reported sounds and finding things dislodged. Electrical technicians have reported issues too with the lighting system without a cause. Christ the Redeemer. It's a concrete space with lightning protection, hiding engineering issues, and a human cost. To the world, it's a symbol of peace, but inside there are cracks, quiet spaces, and historical weight. There are stairs, chambers, all behind closed doors. Number 10. The Eiffel Tower Secret Room. So millions gaze up at it every year. The Eiffel Tower, the most iconic monument in France. It looms over Paris as a symbol of romance and cultural pride. Standing 1,083 feet tall and built for the 1889's World Fair, it's become synonymous with elegance and ambition. But few who ascend its intricate lattice of wrought iron realize that high above the city streets, tucked quietly into its highest levels, is a secret apartment, one that was never meant for the public. Even fewer know that this mysterious space was designed by Gustave Eiffel himself, and it sat locked and unused for decades, hiding in plain sight. Now at first glance, it seems kind of unbelievable. Why would one of the world's most famous public structures have a private room embedded in its superstructure? Why would Eiffel go to the trouble of building it, decorating it, and then sealing it off from virtually everyone? Well, he used this room as a personal retreat and as a space to entertain guests. He guarded access to it fiercely. And while the tower's lower levels were open to the public, this room, of course, remained off limits. Eiffel invited only a handful of people ever into the space, including, most notably, Thomas Edison, who visited in 1889 and gifted Eiffel with one of his newly invented phonographs. The two men reportedly discussed science, philosophy, and the future of human technology, 900 feet above the streets of Paris. Now, it's important to understand the social context at the time. When Eiffel was unveiled in 1889, it was hated by much of the Parisian elites. Artists, writers, and intellectuals called it a disgrace, a rusty monstrosity that just ruined the skyline. Gustave Eiffel himself was mocked for building what many saw as a temporary eyesore. The idea that he would claim a private sanctuary at the peak of it, literally above the heads of his critics, was both bold and symbolic. He had built himself a throne in the clouds, and very few were ever invited up. During World War II, Nazis occupied Paris and used the Eiffel Tower for military communications, and legend has it that the lift cables were cut so that Hitler himself couldn't ascend, forcing German officers to climb hundreds of stairs if they wanted to reach the top. During the occupation, the fate of the secret rooms remains a bit murky. Some historians speculate that it was used by German officers as an observation post for secure meetings, and others believe it was left untouched. What's clear is that by the post-war years, the room had become a myth, rumored but barely confirmed, discussed by tour guides but really never seen. That changed in the 1980s when the Eiffel Tower underwent significant restoration and modernization. During this process, the secret apartment was rediscovered, restored, and carefully preserved. Today, if you take the elevator to the top and peer through a small window, you can see it, his private world, staged exactly as it once was. To this day, the secret room is not listed on standard tour maps. Guides mention it only in passing, and few tourists even notice the small curtained window overlooking the viewing platform. And yet there it sits, a perfectly preserved relic from a vanished century. It is, in every sense, a monument with a secret, one you'd never notice unless you knew where to look. Number 9. The Statue of Liberty, a history of isolation, explosions, and a sealed arm. To most, the Statue of Liberty is a welcoming symbol, an emblem of freedom and a beacon to immigrants arriving on America's shores. Standing 305 feet from base to torch, it dominates the New York harbor. But beneath its noble appearance lies a layered and at times unsettling past, one filled with military installations, disease quarantines, catastrophic explosions, and parts of the statue that are sealed off for reasons few tourists know about. Before it became Liberty Island, the land beneath the statue was called Bedloe's Island, and its history is older and a bit darker than the statue itself. Long before the colossal woman arrived from France in crates, Bedloe's Island was home to smallpox quarantine stations, public executions, and a military fortification. Between the 1700s and late 19th century, the island was used to isolate diseased immigrants from the mainland population. Conditions here were appalling. The infirmed were crammed into wooden barracks with little sanitation, and many died without treatment or burial rites. These grim origins are largely erased from plaques and brochures, but if you dig through enough city archives and military records, the truth emerges. Liberty was built on a foundation of suffering, quite literally. When the statue arrived in 1885, it was a revolutionary design. It was built by Frederic Auguste Bartholdi, with internal structuring engineering by Gustave Eiffel of the Eiffel Tower fame. The skeletal design allowed for an unprecedented size, but early structural flaws emerged almost immediately. The statue swayed excessively in strong winds, and the rivets in the metal joints were prone to corrosion. And perhaps most famously, the torch-bearing arm was unstable, so much so that visitors who climbed up in the torch complained of vibrations and terrifying creaks in the ironwork. Then came the explosion. On July 30th, 1916, a massive blast ripped through the Black Tom Island munitions depot. Directly across from Liberty Island, the explosion was the result of German sabotage. The United States had not yet entered World War I, but German agents sought to disrupt the shipment of arms to the Allies. They ignited over 2 million pounds of ammunition, creating an explosion that shattered windows as far away as Times Square and registered over 5.0 on the Richter scale. The Statue of Liberty was severely damaged in the blast. The torch arm was warped and dozens of internal rivets and iron braces inside were dislodged or bent. To this day, over a century later, no tourist has been allowed to ascend into the torch. And it's not just a matter of preservation. Modern safety reviews reveal that the spiral stairway leading up there is structurally unsound. There's no modern ventilation, no fire escape. Even engineers and preservationists have to get special clearance to enter the chamber. What's more, the gold leaf torch visible today isn't the original. It's a reconstruction added in the 1980s. Even the original color of the statue has a strange story. When it was first unveiled, Liberty shone with a brilliant copper color like a polished penny. But within 20 years, the skin oxidized, turning green. At first, officials tried to remove the patina and worried it was a form of decay, but public outcry led to a reversal as the green became permanent. What's less discussed is that the oxidation process produced toxic byproducts, leading to respiratory issues in maintenance workers throughout the early 20th century. But today, the Statue of Liberty is presented as an open monument, but only a fraction of it is accessible. The arm and torch are sealed, and the shoulder catwalks are off-limits. She's not just a symbol, she is a sealed relic that is riddled with history, wounds, and unspoken stories. A monument to liberty built on quarantine land, struck by sabotage and locked down from within. Number 8. The Gateway Arch of St. Louis. Standing 630 feet above the Mississippi River, the Gateway Arch in St. Louis, Missouri is one of the most elegant landmarks in the United States. Completed in 1965, the arch is a parabolic curve in stainless steel, a perfect shimmering form meant to symbolize the westward expansion of the United States. But what few visitors realize is that the Gateway Arch also contains claustrophobic passages, mechanical systems prone to failure, disorienting altitude effects, and one of the most bizarre internal transportation systems ever engineered. It's beautiful from afar, but surprisingly terrifying up close. The arch's most famous secret is the tram system hidden inside the legs. Because the structure is curved, neither vertical nor horizontal traditional elevators would work. Instead, engineers designed a hybrid tram elevator system. Passengers sit in a small, white 5-seat pod that's shaped like a futuristic washing machine. As the pod ascends, they slowly rotate and level themselves, kind of like gondolas on a Ferris wheel. It sounds ingenious, and it is, but the experience is far from relaxing. The pods are tight, with just enough room for average-sized adults to sit hunched together. The journey to the top takes about 4 minutes. There's no windows, no handrails, and no emergency exits. The walks are blank white metal. While the system jolts or stops, passengers often experience vertigo and claustrophobia. There's no climate control either beyond a small fan, and in the summer heat, the pods can become stifling. The observation deck at the top of the arch adds a layer of unease to the visit. Accessible only by a cramped tram pod, the deck is narrow, curved, and with 16 small rectangular windows, each only 7 by 27 inches. These windows angle downward, offering a vertigo-inducing straight-down view into the city or the river, depending on which side you're on. The floor is slightly sloped, and the curved ceiling compresses your head space, and at peak times over 100 people can cram into the space, which has no restroom, no food, and no direct emergency exit. And yes, the top sways around in the wind. The arch is designed to flex up to 18 inches in high winds, and engineers insist this is safe, and it is. But it doesn't feel safe. On windy days, the deck vibrates subtly, creating a sense of motion that disorients some people. On at least 2 occasions, guests have collapsed and had to be escorted down by emergency staff. Today, the Gateway Arch is a marvel, a mathematical curve that dominates the St. Louis skyline. But inside, its smooth, bare skin are mechanical quirks, engineering risks, and even unnerving unknowns. Technicians stride on narrow walkways hundreds of feet in the air, and somewhere deep inside the silence of its stainless steel core, the arch keeps its secrets well hidden behind the shine. Moving on to number 7, the Great Sphinx of Giza and the sealed chambers beneath. So it may be one of the oldest and most studied monuments on Earth, but the Great Sphinx of Giza still guards some secrets. Carved from a single limestone ridge on the edge of the Giza Plateau, the Sphinx is more than 240 feet long and 66 feet high. Its body and its enigmatic human face have watched over Egypt for more than 4,500 years, or possibly longer, depending on which scholar you ask. But beneath those massive paws and inside the weathered bedrock of its foundation lie sealed passageways and unexplored cavities. Now, the official narrative, accepted by most Egyptologists, is that the Sphinx was built during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre around 2500 BCE, possibly as a portrait of the pharaoh himself. As early as the 1800s, travelers and explorers recorded doorways and chambers beneath and around the Sphinx, and in 1925 French engineer Émile Barizet led a major excavation that uncovered sealed shafts and doorways beneath the Sphinx enclosure. His notes described a rectangular cavity beneath the Sphinx's chest and another beneath the rump, both of which were filled and sealed. In the 1990s, American geologist Dr. Robert Schoch proposed that the deep weathering on the body of the Sphinx, especially on the flanks, wasn't caused by sand erosion, as traditionally believed, but by water. Schoch suggested that this level of weathering would require centuries of heavy rainfall, pushing the Sphinx's construction back thousands of years before Khafre, to a time when Egypt was greener and wetter. In the early 1990s, teams from Stanford Research Institute and the Egyptian Antiquities Organization conducted ground-penetrating radar scans of the Sphinx. These scans identified anomalies beneath the monument, rectangular voids symmetrical in shape lying beneath the front paws and extending back towards the body. Zahi Hawass, then director of Antiquities, acknowledged the presence of the cavities but denied they were accessible or significant. However, access to the area was restricted for years afterwards. The notion that there's sealed chambers beneath the Sphinx is no longer speculation. It's been confirmed by radar, but no major excavation has been permitted. Inside the body, no one knows what might remain there. Ancient builders often embedded hollow chambers in their structures for religious, structural, or ceremonial purposes. The Great Pyramid itself contains sealed voids and hidden shafts, only recently rediscovered using cosmic ray tomography. Could the Sphinx contain similar features? Now, some say yes, others say we may never know. But in a world of satellites, scanners, and robotic probes, the fact that one of the most famous statues on the planet could be sitting on top of an unexplored chamber is astonishing. The secrets of the Sphinx may not be mystical, but they are real, measurable, and inexplicably buried. It just sits there, watching in silence. It's holding its breath, and whatever lies beneath it waits. Number 6. The Monument to the Battle of Nations. Standing 299 feet above a grassy hill in Leipzig, Germany, the Monument to the Battle of Nations is one of the largest and heaviest monuments in Europe. It was constructed to commemorate the defeat of Napoleon's forces in 1813 by a coalition of armies from Prussia, Russia, Austria, and Sweden. With granite lines, a brooding interior, and giant stone warriors, it feels less like a memorial and more like a fortress, or maybe even a tomb. And disturbingly, in some ways, that's exactly what it is. Built between 1898 and 1913, the monument marks the site of the Battle of Leipzig, one of the bloodiest battles in European history before the 20th century. Over 4 days, more than 600,000 soldiers fought in and around the city. When it was over, an estimated 90,000 were dead or wounded. Beneath the foundation of this monument, deep in the crypt and substructure, is a series of sealed chambers and burial vaults. When the monument was first being constructed, workers digging into the soil found bones, broken swords, cannonballs, and mass graves. Rather than disturb the remains, the builders incorporated the dead into the monument's foundation. Several skeletal remains were reinterred in ceremonial crypts within the base, and others were left undisturbed. In essence, the monument was built atop, around, and in some cases literally over the bodies of the fallen. Above the crypt is the dome chamber. That's a hall with a ceiling of over 220 feet, and the dome is ringed by 16 seated warrior figures known as the Watchmen. They stare into the chamber with blank eyes. Between them and the floor is a narrowing, winding stairway that leads up 364 steps to the viewing platform. And here's where the stories begin. Visitors have long reported auditory hallucinations inside the monument, echoes that don't match the sounds made, footsteps from above when no one else is climbing, and guides have spoken of tour groups seeing shadowy figures in the stairwell that vanish before they can be confirmed. Then there's the sealed chamber, a room accessible only through a locked steel hatch embedded in the monument's rear foundation. No signage marks it, and most visitors would never see it, but according to building records, the chamber was used during World War II as a document vault and military outpost. But maybe the strangest feature of all is the persistent condensation. Even in summer, the monument's interior is damp and cool. Water seeps through the stone, the walls sweat, and in the lower levels, maintenance shafts have documented mold growth. Environmental engineers suggest it's due to poor ventilation and natural moisture trapped in the stone, but others whisper that the dampness is something more, a spiritual presence, or a symptom of building a monument on top 90,000 forgotten souls. Despite, or maybe because of, its eerie reputation, the monument remains one of the most visited war memorials in Europe. Number 5. The Motherland Calls, Russia's towering warrior with a hidden secret beneath her feet. She towers over Volgograd, her sword raised high, hair swept by a phantom wind. The Motherland Calls, completed in 1967, is not just a statue, it is a message that's carved into the sky. At 279 feet from base to tip of blade, she was for a time the tallest statue in the world. But for all her power and grandeur, this immense figure hides a number of deeply unsettling truths. From internal design flaws to a dangerously shifting foundation, and even rumors of radioactive contamination during construction, Russia's most famous monument is teetering, both literally and metaphorically, on the edge. Built on a strategic hill in the city formerly known as Stalingrad, the statue marks the site of one of the bloodiest battles in human history. Between 1942 and 1943, more than 2 million soldiers and civilians died in the battle, and the Soviet Union's desperate and ultimately victorious stand against Nazi Germany. The land beneath the statue is soaked in blood. Mass graves surround the base, and visitors don't often realize that these grass fields are filled with the bodies of tens of thousands. Inside the statue is a labyrinth of steel cables, winding stairs, and narrow platforms. Workers have to ascend hundreds of feet to inspect the tension rods, which do help keep the statue from collapsing under its own weight. These rods require continual adjustments due to seasonal temperature changes, which can cause the concrete to expand and contract. And in 2009, Russia's Ministry of Culture confirmed that the statue had begun to lean permanently. Groundwater and seismic shifts had caused the soil beneath the base to erode, and emergency reinforcements were installed. And that sword? That's another story entirely. The original sword, designed to be both lightweight and weather-resistant, began to vibrate and hum ominously in the wind, alarming engineers and residents. Its hollow metal structure was prone to resonant frequencies, meaning it would begin to sing, kind of, in high winds, emitting a deep, droning note that echoed across Volgograd. After complaints and safety concerns, the sword was replaced with a heavier, solid version, which eliminated the sound but increased the weight load on the already strained right arm. No public report has confirmed whether that arm is structurally stable today. Then there are the rumors. Workers who helped build the statue have claimed in interviews and memoirs that the steel used in the internal skeleton came from salvaged tanks and war wreckage, some of which had been exposed to low-level radiation. Soviet-era secrecy prevents any documentation from surfacing, but to this day no Geiger counter readings are available from the statue's interior. Well, despite all the dangers, the Motherland Calls does remain a national icon. It is a symbol of victory and patriotism. But as Russia modernizes its infrastructure, engineers are under growing pressure to either stabilize or reconstruct the monument, a task that would be nearly impossible given its size and fragility. Some experts believe the statue may not survive another century. Without major intervention, she will lean, crack, and eventually fall. Number 4. The Mausoleum at Halicarnassus. Long before skyscrapers, before cathedrals and palaces dwarfed the city blocks, there stood a structure so amazing it was counted among the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus. Built around 350 BCE in present-day Bodrum, Turkey, it wasn't just a tomb, it blended Egyptian, Greek, and Anatolian influences into a towering monument. But the mausoleum hasn't stood the test of time. Today it's a ruin, and within its broken stones lies a story of family obsession, ghostly rumors, and sacrificial labor, and a slow, terrifying fall. The mausoleum was commissioned by Artemisia II, sister and wife to Mausolus, the Persian satrap or the governor of Caria. When Mausolus died, she vowed to build him the most magnificent tomb the world had ever seen. The result was a multi-tiered monument over 135 feet tall, adorned with more than 400 sculptures. The scale and complexity stunned the ancient viewers. The term mausoleum comes directly from Mausolus's name. Over the centuries, the monument began to falter. Multiple earthquakes between the 10th and 15th centuries caused cracks in the columns, shifting the stonework, and partial collapses. By the time the Crusader Knights arrived in the 1400s, the upper sections had crumbled, and seeing a convenient quarry, they dismantled huge sections to build Bodrum Castle, incorporating broken statues and polished stones into their walls. Modern archaeological evidence adds to the monument's mystery. In the 1980s, ground-penetrating radar revealed subterranean chambers beneath the tomb's foundation. Some were explored, others were deemed too unstable. One in particular, nicknamed Chamber X, was found sealed behind a massive stone slab, and despite efforts, it's never been opened. The contents, if any, remain unknown. Today, the site of the mausoleum is quiet. A few broken columns remain, carefully propped upright, and tourists can walk through the overgrown ruins, reading plaques that describe what once was. But even in ruin, the mausoleum commands respect. Its scale is still impressive, and its scars speak louder than its marble ever could. Number 3. The Yad Vashem Memorial. In the hills west of Jerusalem, above a pine-covered ridge overlooking the Valley of the Communities, is one of the most emotionally overwhelming memorials on Earth, the Yad Vashem, Israel's official memorial to the victims of the Holocaust. It's not a single monument, but it's a complex, a museum, a sculpture garden, a database of names, and a solemn education center carved into the landscape. At its heart is the Hall of Names, a conical chamber lined with photographs and files that seems endless. And behind its quiet design lies one of the darkest and most unsettling truths of the modern era. Some of the names it holds were meant to be lost forever, and others may never be uncovered at all. The Hall of Names contains over 4.8 million records, pages of testimonies for victims, the Holocaust submitted by surviving relatives, friends, and eyewitnesses. Each entry includes as much information as is known: name, date of birth, place of origin, date, and place of death, and often a photograph. The upper dome of the chamber displays these photos like constellations in the dark, eyes and faces looking down at the visitors. The lower part descends into a mirrored pool, creating the illusion of a bottomless memory well. In the years immediately following World War II, records of the Nazi regime's genocide were scattered, destroyed, or maybe even hoarded. The Soviets, upon liberating Eastern European camps and archives, classified huge amounts of information, some of which has still never been released to Western researchers. Entire transport lists, prison registries, and execution orders remain sealed in Russian military archives. Even more unsettling is the fact that some names are absent by choice. Survivors refuse to submit testimony about family members out of shame, trauma, or fear of persecution in their new countries. And then there are the false names. Not all entries in the database are verified, and in the early decades some testimonies were submitted multiple times under different spellings or by conflicting sources. There are duplicate files for victims who were never confirmed dead. Others are incomplete, simply labeled child, mother, or unknown woman. These phantom records float within the archive, and they're evidence of a crime too big to categorize. Within the complex is a lesser-known chamber, though, the Repository of the Righteous, containing files on non-Jewish people who saved Jewish lives during the Holocaust. This space, while smaller, are less public and has its own strange detail. Multiple files have been anonymized or redacted. A few righteous had files sealed after it was found that their motivation was not kindness, but bribery or coercion, and the monument honors them all. Yet the deeper one goes into the files, the blurrier the lines become. Yad Vashem was created to remember, but its quietest secret is how much has been forgotten, or worse, erased. It is a monument to the dead, but also to the impossible task of remembering them all. Number 2. The Valley of the Fallen. Just outside of Madrid, hidden among the mountains, lies one of the most controversial monuments in modern Europe, the Valley of the Fallen. It was intended to honor those killed during the Spanish Civil War, a brutal conflict that tore the country apart from 1936 to 1939. But for decades, the monument was also the burial site of General Francisco Franco, Spain's fascist dictator, and it was built in part by the very prisoners he imprisoned and condemned. The monument is an imposing complex, a 500-foot-tall granite cross mounted onto a mountain peak visible for miles. It was conceived by Franco himself in 1940, shortly after his nationalist forces triumphed over the Spanish Republic. Construction took nearly 20 years, and during that time, tens of thousands of political prisoners were used as forced labor. Estimates suggest that between 20,000 to 30,000 prisoners worked on the site under harsh conditions. At least hundreds died from falling rocks, tunnel collapses, and untreated illnesses. Their names were never given. To this day, there is no complete record of who built the Valley of the Fallen, and that's no accident. Franco's government classified the monument as a symbol of reconciliation, meant to unite Spain's war-torn factions, but the only names carved into the basilica walls for decades were those of Francoist soldiers. It wasn't until after Franco's death in 1975 that the Republican dead were added, and even then, many families refused to allow their relatives' names to be included. The main nave of the basilica stretches over 800 feet into the mountain, lit by low chandeliers and flanked by giant stone angels. At the end of the nave is an altar, and until recently a grave marked simply Francisco Franco. His body was interred there in 1975 in a ceremony held without public approval. For years, the Spanish government refused to move him, and pilgrims visited daily, many laying fascist flags or giving Nazi salutes at his tomb. Only in 2019, after years of political debate, was Franco's body exhumed and relocated, a televised moment that sparked national outrage. But removing Franco didn't solve any of the valley's problems. Beneath the basilica lies more than 33,000 bodies, stored in crypts and ossuaries that extend into the mountain. The crypt system is so poorly documented that bones have been discovered in the wrong vaults, stacked haphazardly and exposed to water damage and mold. According to official blueprints, a sealed room exists behind the basilica's choir loft, known internally as the Z Room. Its purpose is unclear. Some believe it was a private retreat for Franco, others say it housed emergency communication equipment. But today, the Valley of the Fallen sits in uneasy silence. Guided tours are brief and heavily monitored, political slogans are banned, and security is tight. And yet the monument endures, a reminder of a regime that ruled through fear and built its legacy into the bedrock. It was meant to bring peace, but it still divides. Number 1. The Juche Tower in North Korea. Rising 560 feet above the Taedong River, facing directly towards the Grand People's Study House and the immense bronze statues of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, the Juche Tower in Pyongyang is one of the most commanding monuments. Built in 1982 to commemorate the 70th anniversary of North Korea's founding leader Kim Il-sung, this tower is named after the country's official state ideology, Juche, a blend of nationalism, self-reliance, and absolute loyalty to the regime. To the average tourist, though, mostly Chinese visitors and a very small number of heavily escorted foreigners, the Juche Tower appears like a simple ideological monument. Its sleek vertical column recalls an obelisk made from 25,000 blocks of white granite, supposedly one for each day of Kim Il-sung's life up to his 70th birthday. An observation deck sits just below the red flame at the top, accessible by elevator, and below are tiers of galleries and quiet rooms lined with glass, showcasing books, writings, and selected state artworks. But nearly half of the structure is completely off-limits to visitors, even to most North Koreans. The interior, while partially accessible via guided tour, includes floors that are unlit, sealed behind reinforced doors or watched over by guards. There's also some stories, unconfirmed but consistently repeated, about the presence of a sealed ideological archive somewhere within the tower, rumored to contain original Juche documents, handwritten memos by Kim Il-sung. While these claims can't be verified, they are supported by similar internal archives known to exist in the Palace of the Sun, where the embalmed bodies of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il lie in glass sarcophagi. Well beyond the physical structure, though, the symbolic positioning of the tower raises further questions. It was not randomly placed. The tower sits directly across the river from the Grand People's Study House, Pyongyang's main ideological library. The red flame on top of the tower is also more than a decorative crown. At night it glows with an intense internal lighting, visible across most of Pyongyang. During power shortages or blackouts, when the entire district of Pyongyang go dark, the flame often continues to shine. Tourists and diplomats have noticed this oddity for years, suggesting the flame is connected to a protected backup power supply. Well, despite the towering confidence it projects, the tower does suffer from severe maintenance issues. Pyongyang's climate, hot summers and freezing winters, has taken a toll on the granite facade. Cracks have appeared on the base, and water damage from rainfall has been reported near ventilation shafts. Still, no major renovation has ever been confirmed. And yet, for all its ominous features, the tower remains a centerpiece of Pyongyang, a required stop on every diplomatic tour. Propaganda broadcasts feature the tower constantly, often superimposed with red rays of light or spinning Juche emblems. but inside it's mostly empty. Half its floors are sealed, the upper chamber is unexplored by anyone outside the regime, its elevators serve levels that are never shown, it's flame-powered by one designed not for glory, but for retreat. It guides ideology, and inside its quiet chambers, behind those reinforced doors, it keeps its secrets. For now, at least.